Hi, this is Jonas. I'm an indie game developer, and in this video I will play your indie games, the ones you've sent me, and I will give you my feedback. I just thought, as I've spent the last 4 weeks talking about my indie game, Will You Snail, now would be the perfect time to spend some time talking about your indie games as well. So that's what I want to do. Let's go! Here's an email I have to admit resonated quite a bit with me. I'm a solo developer who has quit his day job to do game development full time, and I have launched my game on Steam, but no one is interested. I think what you need is actually just a little bit of brutal honesty. You asked for it, I'm willing to give it to you. First of all, quitting your day job to do game development, bold move, but I respect that decision and I want you to succeed. I want this to work out for you. Let's have a look. And before we go any further, I want you to know that you have my utmost respect. You managed to finish a game, you managed to upload it to Steam. That is not an easy task, you pulled it off. And I realized that in the upcoming section I might come across as a little cocky. Please don't take it personally. I mean well. The problem I see here is that at the very first glance, it instantly looks like an asset flip. For everybody who doesn't know what an asset flip is basically a game where you don't make the graphics yourself. You just type tree, for example, in the Unity asset store, and then basically use some of the trees somebody else made. So instead of making the assets of your game yourself, you're just putting them together from assets that already exist and that other people made. To be honest, there's not really anything wrong with that procedure. You should save time wherever you can, but you have to be aware that asset flips have a little bit of a bad reputation, which is why looking like an asset flip is not necessarily something that helps your sales. How do you recognize an asset flip? There's a very big red flag that helps to identify asset flips, and that is if the quality of the user interface, the UI, is significantly lower than the quality of the in-game assets, and that is absolutely the case here. Like the in-game screenshots, and I have to give you that, they look very nice. It doesn't even look all that asset flippy, you know, it blends together really nicely. However, what gives you away is the user interface. Like, I'm not crazy, right? You can see what I mean here. There's just a massive difference between quality of game and quality of UI. Secondly, the target audience. What you have made is basically a hunting simulator. Have fun hunting down the vermin who are destroying the farmers' crops and livelihood. At best, it is a hunting simulator. Problem with that is there are a couple of really big flagship games out there that do pretty much the exact same thing. Here, Hunting Simulator, which by the way looks very nice and immersive. As you can see, it's not cluttered up with UI. Probably does everything your game does, so I'm not sure if it's a smart move to compete with games like that. You're essentially competing with these games. As you can see here, if I type in Hunting Simulator, the list is very long. There are a ton of hunting simulators already out there. Some of them have very competitive pricing as well. That is why a hunting simulator that looks like this doesn't really stand a chance on the Steam marketplace. So next up, let's have a look at the fantasy of this game, because what you've made here is not exactly a hunting simulator. The game is called Vermin Hunter, and what you do in this game is you basically hunt vermin. So I feel like that is a very, very niche audience. As a hunting fan, I don't know, I'm not a hunting fan at all. But as a hunting fan, or as somebody who wants to play a hunting simulator, I would not be very turned on by the screenshot. This is not what I want to see as somebody who's looking for a hunting simulator. And everybody who's not looking for a hunting simulator is probably also not interested in your game, because they probably don't like hunting. So that is a big issue right here. You don't really have a target audience. You don't really cater towards people who want a hunting simulator, but you also don't cater really to anybody else. And then the last thing I unfortunately also have to say, it just really comes off a little bit creepy. Let's have a look at the trailer, and then you'll probably understand what I mean. See, here you see somebody. Oh no, you're not aiming at cow. Okay, thank God. I was already super confused when I saw that the first time. Okay, so it's basically somebody standing in the field shooting at rats or something. Is that really the way you deal with rats? Like, have you ever seen a farmer that is like, ah, damn rats, I'm gonna hire somebody, some creepy dude with a rifle who'll just go around my my property and shoot rats? Like, I don't think that is the way you deal with rats. And also, like, if you have a game called Vermin Hunter, then perhaps on your thumbnail you don't want to put a mouse that looks that cute. Like, nobody wants to harm that mouse. That just makes it even more creepy, because that mouse here just looks so cute. I want to pet it. I don't want to shoot it, you know? That shot here of that dude creeping through the field, that is creepy as hell. Like, who does that? Once again, just trying to be brutally honest here, not trying to judge you. My main intention is to help you out with your next game. What I would do with your next game, firstly, go for a way smaller game. Don't make something with an inventory and thousands of upgrades and rifles you can buy. As a solo developer, you have to keep it small, you have to keep it simple, because that allows you to put a lot more effort into the quality and into the look of the game. Lean into your strengths. If you're not able to create nice looking UI, then just don't make a game that requires any UI. You clearly have some talent here, you can make some really nice looking 3D stuff as it seems. And you can see here like the in-game graphic looks really good. Like even if this is an asset flip, even if you took those assets from the asset store, honestly I don't care. If you can find a way to make your game look good, go for it. The in-game graphic is very well put together. Then find a clear target audience. If you want to cater to hunting fans, then cater to hunting fans. Let's go to Google Trends. Hunting simulator. Okay, so that's people searching for hunting simulator. Nobody's searching for Vermin hunter. So maybe that is the kind of fact checking you should do next time before you get started. And then of course, making a hunting simulator honestly wouldn't have been a great idea either. The competition for that is too strong. What I'm trying to say is don't try to make a AAA game as a solo developer. Be aware of the fact that you're a solo developer and you just have to make games that you can make as a solo developer. I honestly really wish you the best of luck. I really hope you succeed as a solo developer. Fingers crossed. And I hope this was a great learning experience for you. Good luck next time. Hope you make it. Next game is called CupCakoon, which clearly looks like a mobile game. Buttons look a bit low resolution, and I can also see that they are cut off here, so perhaps you can increase the resolution of those a bit and make sure that the shadow is not cut off at the left side. Oh no. You actually put my face in there. Ah! Okay, so I have 3 jumps and then I need to recover somehow. So pretty fun one-button gameplay. I dig it. Ah, okay. When I jump against a cloud from the bottom, I also gain my jumps back. So pretty excellent sound design, pretty beautiful graphics as well, except for the giant Jonas face. Now the sky has a different color, looks beautiful. This is pretty epic for a one-button game. The chameleon is also just so cute. Now the last jump is always a bit higher. That's cool. I mean, the trail shows me what I did in the past, so perhaps it makes it a bit easier to learn and see the effect of my jumps and my actions. Maybe include a way here to get back in. Damn it! One thing I'm wondering about is why you show my remaining jumps in the bottom left corner. Wouldn't it be better to have the amounts of jumps somewhere near your character so you don't have to look back and forth as much? You know, perhaps the amount of cream on your cupcake or something like that could represent the amounts of remaining jumps you have. I feel like you could have some sort of clever visual representation here on the cupcake that just shows me how many jumps I have remaining. You're almost there, please don't fall, no. Maybe that one level at the beginning of the game was a bit too long. I can see that being a bit frustrating, especially if you have to replay long segments like that. I feel like you could shorten that level down a little bit just to make sure nobody gets stuck there. If people get stuck that early into the game, it's a little bit of a shame. So maybe just don't take the risk and make that level a bit shorter. Overall, very well designed, very well optimized for mobile. And I also feel like I have to show you the trailer. Here we have wind, rainbows, thunder, snow. So overall just some pretty creative stuff. The game looks great. The setting and the theme definitely pops out. Like, when do you see cute cupcakes flying through clouds? Very good choice. Also very good choice for a casual game, I think. Similar to games like Candy Crush, I feel like the setting has a very general appeal that appeals to pretty much everybody. Everybody likes cute cupcakes bouncing around on clouds. That is just something that is instantly captivating. And then that cute little chameleon at the end just tops it all off. I want to keep playing actually, but I'll play something else now. You need to get home before you get hurt. Can you see any way to get the door open? Where am I? Ah, okay. I'm this tiny little figurine right here. I actually thought this gray area is the area I walk in and these darker things are here are the walls. Usually you assume that the darker things are closer to the camera, so I just thought as these things are darker, this is probably the walls, this is what's closer to the camera. So perhaps you can switch that around. Also, I'm not quite sure about that strong of a contrast in the background. That's one more reason why I thought this is the area you move in. Pick up the gun, left click to fire. Don't worry, Dex, I'll see if I can get get it open from here, look around and see if you can find a weapon. Okay, maybe that's a bit too much text. Need to switch your gun to the other hand. Then I can fire through here to destroy that. And that only works if I have the gun in the correct hand. So that's actually pretty smart. I see the stairs, but there's a really scary looking robot statue. I petrified that bot years ago. Just hurry and get to the stairs where it's safe. Right click to sprint. Okay. Oh no, I did not survive. Cool, that's actually a pretty cool intro. I like that. Now why do I play that character again? Did I survive? This right here probably still has some placeholder graphics. This does not look finished. This seems to be the hub area. Okay, now why am I suddenly not a character anymore but a bot? First thing I'm noticing when rotating this bot is that the bot is not rotating around its center. The pivot seems to be somewhere in the front here and that just doesn't feel right. It should be rotating around the center of its mass and that center of mass is definitely further in the back of the bot. First impression is pretty cool. I really like this UI down here, this canister, which I assume is my health or something. The bot looks a little more sci-fi and less steampunky. And then the walls here, the texture of those walls looks pretty great. I really like that. The only thing that makes these walls feel a little weird to me is the fact that they have straight edges. Usually for rocks I'd expect them to have a little more of a curvy outline here, so perhaps there's a way to make that happen. Give them a little more of an interesting silhouette and not just a straight line. Let's see what we run into, and I assume, as this is a roguelike, this is probably randomly generated here. Oh, quite a ton of enemies here. Okay, seems like that down here is not my health because that goes up when I'm shooting, so I assume I can overheat or something. Then maybe that down here is my health. I have to say, enemy projectiles feel very slow, which is a good thing in the fact that I can more easily dodge them, but it also feels a bit strange, which probably has to do with their sprites, with how they look. They don't look like slow projectiles, the sprites look like they're pretty fast. So perhaps if you want them to be that slow, they should have a sprite that allows them to be slow. For example, just a circle. I like the fact that there are a lot of different enemies and they all die relatively quickly, which I guess is somewhat necessary for making me feel powerful. Ah, that's a trap. Oh, okay. Thing is, at the moment, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I don't really know what my objective is, so I would maybe make sure players know what they're looking for. And wasn't there a way to sprint? Ah, right. But sprinting, once again, also seems to increase my heat level. I'd expect my bot to have the same color as this health bar thingy. What is that little red dot doing? Is that boosting or healing enemies? Or is it helping me to destroy them? But then why can I shoot it? So some things don't communicate themselves quite properly yet. Apparently this game is about finding new guns. I haven't really found anything so far, which means perhaps the pacing of that is a bit too low. Thing that's missing for me personally right now is like having a little more interesting combat, which is probably revolved around abilities and guns. I've already seen that this game has abilities, this game has guns. So if you want to capture my attention, then perhaps you should give me access to those tools a little bit earlier. That is the main advice I would give for now. Oh, finally found something. I know that it is tempting to make your game a little more grindy in order to stretch out the playtime, but before you can stretch out the playtime, the first thing you must make sure is that players have the urge to grind your game. Maybe this flame here is my health. Actually, I have no idea what my health is. That flame here is my health, right? But then what is this down here? Like, that is actually a bit unclear. Maybe you should add a little heart next to that flame or something that indicates what is the health. Even though there are a lot of enemies, in a way I have to say that they kind of feel a bit samey, and I'm wondering why that is. It's probably because I can defeat all of them with the same strategy, which is just dodging their bullets and shooting them straight to their face. So even though you have a lot of different enemies, these enemies don't force me to switch up my playstyle, right? I can all defeat them with the exact same playstyle, which makes them feel a bit samey, even though they're not really. The reason why usually you put a lot of different enemies in your game is because you want to force the player into mixing up the playstyle. I don't think you've achieved that here quite yet. Those enemies that come straight at you, they should probably have a little more HP, because then they would force me to back up and flee from them a little bit. That is something that would force me into a different playstyle. And of course here, these bullets that are flying over the walls are something that force me into a little bit of a different playstyle at times. But for example, this snake right here doesn't really force me to do anything differently than, for example, this enemy here. Damn it. I lost and when I lose, unfortunately the game crashes. Okay, so unfortunately I didn't manage to uncover everything this game has to offer, which would be my critique point number 1. If you have some cool stuff in your game, give players access to that cool stuff as quickly as possible so they can start enjoying your game. If they don't enjoy your game, then basically all of the end game content you have in your game becomes completely useless because people will just quit playing the game. And then secondly, I think it's really cool that you have a lot of different enemies in your game. What I'd like to see is modifying those enemies in a way that they force you into different playstyles. Because at the moment, I can beat all of the enemies by just dodging a couple of very slow bullets and firing at them. Like, if every enemy can be defeated with the same playstyle, then what is the point of having multiple enemies? Why then not just have one enemy? It's actually interesting. I haven't really thought about this before playing this. So, pretty eye-opening for me as well. And then of course there are the visuals. Some of the things cast shadows, some things don't cast any shadows. For example, those chests, if you want them to look more three-dimensional, you need to make sure they cast a shadow, because if walls cast a shadow, that looks pretty cool. But the flip side of that is that of course that everything that doesn't cast a shadow now suddenly looks very, very flat and two-dimensional. Like it's just a flat plane on the ground. If you want a chest look like a chest that is actually standing out of the ground, it needs to have a little bit of a shadow. Otherwise, it just looks like a pattern on the ground. I feel like this is quite promising. I like the premise of the game. It could become quite a fun roguelike. Perhaps you could think a little more about what differentiates this roguelike from other roguelikes, because there are already, of course, a lot of pretty good top-down shooter roguelikes out there. I feel like I haven't made it far enough into the game to really judge if there's anything specific that sets you apart. For example, the fact that you can hold two guns in your two different hands. Is that a thing in your game? Like I haven't really made it that far into your game, which is a little bit of a shame. Something like that. You need something that sets your game apart. I feel like the steampunk thing more than anything is probably what sets your game apart the most right now. If I were you, I would try to lean into that steampunk setting as much as possible. And the way you handle health and overheating of weapons at the moment is already a good way of doing that. So for all of the abilities and upcoming content of the game, just lean into that steampunk setting as much as possible for all of the mechanics that you still put into the game, because I feel like that is the number 1 thing that sets your game apart at the moment. I don't think there are any steampunk roguelikes out there at the moment yet, not that I'm aware of. Steampunk all the way. That would be my advice. Very nice, I like it. Let's move on. Okay, now this next game right here is called Singutron, which looked interesting. Let's try endless mode. Let's see if I can figure out what I need to do. It seems like this green area here is where I can spawn lines. And then I have a ton of stats right here, which feels really overwhelming. And apparently, whenever 2 of those lines collide, they create a rectangle. And then it starts zooming back. Okay. Okay, so if I just shoot them out into nowhere, they'll eventually create a rectangle. That's how it works? It seems to be so. It seems like there's an X resource and a Y resource, and the line cost increases as well. Is that correct? So I feel like this UI here is the first thing that I would probably improve if you want to keep working on this. First of all, the zoom is something I'm not sure you need on the screen. For example, instead of having the zoom here, you could also just have a grid in the background that zooms out with you, and then perhaps there could be a couple of small numbers next to the grid or something. Just get rid of that giant pile of numbers here. The time maybe somewhere in the center here, just separate it as well, just break this up a little bit. And then here production and resources can be combined. For example, you can just put the production in brackets behind the resources. Numbers are already so high that I can't really read this properly anymore, so perhaps at a certain point it should be rounded to K or something like that. Maybe there should just be 700K, and then here line cost 100K, and that would make it a bit more readable. Then once again here, last rectangle value, that is just something you could show directly on the rectangle whenever I place it. So if I pay per line, then probably the best strategy is to just place a line here and place a line here. Or maybe not even to place that line down there, because we know if I just let that line run into the abyss over here, it'll eventually turn into a square anyway, into a rectangle, which feels to me like a bug. If that just runs out of the screen, it shouldn't turn into a rectangle. That makes it a bit too easy. But in general, it's a very interesting concept. I'm very intrigued by this. And now the numbers are starting to get really, really high. What I also have to say is the game looks really ugly, which is mostly down to the colors. You can see that all of these squares, they pretty much look like the colors have just been chosen randomly for all of these squares. The easiest way to fix the look of your game or to improve the look of your game is to just pick a decent color scheme. For example, you can go to colormind.io and just pick one of these color schemes and then just apply that color scheme to your game. I'm not even sure if that vignette inside the squares is needed. See, something like this I feel like would work just fine for your game. For a simple game like yours, a simple look is totally fine. This looks like programmer art, no offense. Maybe you can give those red blocks a little bit of a different color as well in order to differentiate them from one another, just to make sure you can see where they start and end. I'd go for something like this if I were you. Then in terms of gameplay, as I've said, it feels a bit abusable. So even though I really like the simplicity, I like the concept, like this way of playing is not seems not to be the best way. The best way seems to be just placing a line here and waiting until it forms into a square. So that is the first thing I would fix. If a line goes out of bounds, it should not form a rectangle automatically. And then secondly, I feel like even though I really like the simplicity, perhaps this needs a bit more complexity in certain areas, and perhaps it can also be simplified in other areas. For example, I'm not sure if we even need all of those resources, because honestly, while playing this game, I don't even look all that much at the resources. I just place the line, and most of the time I have enough resources anyway, so I don't really care about the resources. Maybe placing these lines should just be a cooldown based ability. I don't think this game gains all that much from resources, and it especially doesn't gain a lot from having 2 resources. That just feels overkill. So I feel like there's definitely room for simplification in terms of resources, etc, etc. And then in other areas, perhaps it could use a bit more complexity, because at the moment the best strategy is just to place a line as far out as possible. Right? If you can place a line here, you'll always place the line here, and if you can place a line here, you'll always place the line here. So I feel like there needs something that encourages you to make smaller squares just as a counterbalance. And one thing, for example, that could do that is having some enemies. If one of these enemies collides with the line, perhaps it will break the line, because that would make sure you have a little bit of a risk-reward system. If you place your line very far out and try to make a very big square, then you have a higher risk of it being destroyed by an enemy. If you place it further inwards, yes, your returns will not be as high, but the risk of the lines being destroyed is not as high either. Just a little bit of a risk-reward system that stops you from always placing your lines as far out as you possibly can, because that is a little bit of a boring strategy. And the advantage of doing that is probably also that you can just allow the player to place these lines a lot more liberally. Perhaps you don't even have to restrict the area where the player can build. Perhaps you can just allow the player to build these lines wherever the hell you want, because you already have that risk-reward system in place, you know? You don't have to artificially limit the space where I can spawn these lines if I already have an incentive not to be too greedy. I feel like that could be a nice addition. I really dig the main concept of this game. I really hope you invest some more time into this. I see some serious potential here. If you simplify some of the unnecessary elements of this game and add a little bit of, just a tiny bit of complexity to the correct parts of this game, I can really see this becoming a really good one. Very well done. Hope that helps you out a bit. Very nice. Next up, let's play Funtime. First thing I noticed is that there's a feedback button right in the menu, which is something I always appreciate. If you press that, you go right to a feedback form. Should give you some nice intel from playtesters. It seems like this is a matter of speed. The faster I beat this level, the more stars I'll get. That is communicated in a very clear and understandable way to me. Intuitive. Ooh, that was a nice effect. Oh, where's my mouse? Oh no, I can't see my cursor, which makes me think this is probably optimized for being played with gamepad. Please, for us mouse users, maybe make this a bit more intuitive, because this does not feel good for us mouse users. No. Also, it feels like there's a tiny bit of delay on the arrow key input, but maybe I'm crazy. Okay, what's with that? Am I supposed to destroy that laser, or how else am I supposed to get through that? How? Like, that is strange. Like, this is the first level and I have literally no idea how to get through that. Oh, I just need to pick up the health pack. Is that all? Pick up another health pack, which allows me to get through that. Okay, lol. Ah, it's so hard to aim. The effects are really sick. There's so much stuff flying around that's Gets a bit confusing though. It gets a bit hard to read what I'm allowed to touch and what not. Especially these little squares here and all the little projectiles. Some of the stuff is really easy to miss. Okay, so this is high score based. So I basically press 1 to get through that. And 2 to get through that. 4, 3. Oh no, and then I have to remember the numbers. Oh no. Oh dear God, no. Oh, I can still go through the next level? Okay. So that last level made me wonder what the purpose of that mechanic was, because that in itself was not very fun times. Okay, so now what? Stalemate. What do you want me to do? This is interesting. I can color the level, which seems like an interesting mechanic. It would be very interesting if changing my color would also change my weapon. Ah, maybe I need to become blue. Ah. Okay, now I need to become yellow. Once again, it looks very messy, which makes it super hard to dodge some of the... Especially the cubes, I feel like are really hard to see. I'm running out of... Like, seeing it, I can't see tiny projectiles like that. There's just no way in a mess like this. There are so many little dot particles flying around. No way. Here, depending on my color, the little gear wheel behind me does something slightly different. So here are a couple of things I would tell you. Listen up. First of all, I have to say I really dig the neon aesthetic. It looks very nice, it looks very polished. The menu looks very nice, the game looks very nice. Unfortunately, it also looks kind of cluttered. Sometimes it's very hard to see what's going on. I would really make sure that all of the enemies, all of the things you're not supposed to touch are very clearly visible. And I feel like one way to do that is to just make sure there are not as many tiny objects that you need to dodge, because your particles make sure there are tiny dots flying all over the place pretty much all of the time. And now if I have to dodge some of these little tiny dots, that's just not possible. I can't see them. It won't happen. They need to be more visible. Same goes for those little cubes. They, I feel like, were almost too small. I didn't see them oftentimes, especially when they spawn. They have a little glowy effect. They look kind of similar to the collectibles that I need to collect in some of the levels. So these small cubes, very hard to see. Sometimes I just run into them because I didn't see them. That being said, the effects when you detonate a bomb or when you get hit, absolutely amazing, feels great. Next thing I absolutely have to say is make sure you have better mouse controls in your game. I guarantee you 100% if you publish this on Steam, I will not be the last person complaining about the mouse controls. Because some people just don't have gamepads, some people just have to play with mouse, and at the moment it feels very unnatural to aim with the mouse. Usually what you do with when you control a game with the mouse or a top-down shooter is you shoot where the cursor is. In a perfect world, like, I would just consider doing that. Put a pointer in the game, put a cursor in the game, and just let me shoot in the direction of the cursor. I feel like that feels a lot more natural to mouse users. That is something we're used to. That is something that allows us to aim consistently in the direction we want to aim in. I mean, if you want to keep it like that, you can do that. I'm just telling you, you'll hear more complaints by other people. I'm 100% sure that will happen if you keep it like this. That's all I'm saying. The difficulty, I feel like, was a bit too high for the beginning. Maybe that has to do with the fact that aiming is a bit hard with the mouse. But in general, I would say just make the beginning of the game a bit easier. And yes, it was possible for me to get through those levels, but what I would argue is you also need to make it a bit easier to get 3 stars at the beginning of the game, because it just doesn't feel very motivating if you play a level and you really try and you get 1 or 0 stars or something like that. So you can ramp that difficulty up later on, but in the beginning you want to give people a couple of nice success moments where you just basically give them a couple of 3 stars for free, more or less. The advantage of that is also that they get into the habit of wanting 3 stars, and then when the levels start getting more and more difficult later on, then it'll be a lot more likely that they replay the levels to basically keep up their 3-star streak. You know, if I have like 2 stars in the first level, 1 star in the second level, then I'm not gonna try to get 3 stars in the third level, because why should I? Whereas if I have a streak of, oh, I have completed all levels with 3 stars so far, then of course I want to get 3 stars in the next one, and if I don't get that, it's a lot more likely that I'll replay the level to get 3 stars, which of course if you put a system like this in your game where you can get stars, that is what you want. You want people to replay your levels, right? If you want your star system to work, if you want players to replay your levels, then I feel like you have to grant me a couple of 3-star levels for free at the beginning of the game, so I get hooked on the feeling of getting 3 stars, and also that makes sure that new players get into the game a bit easier and don't feel as frustrated. And then the last thing that kind of irritated me was the coloring mechanic. The coloring mechanic is a very cool, unique selling point. It's definitely something that helps you to differentiate yourself from other top-down shooters, so keep it in your game. The only thing I feel like is that the follow through with it feels a bit inconsistent, because there are a lot of situations in the game where there are red enemies that are not destroyed by my red trails. There are a lot of situations where there are red projectiles that are not blocked by my red trails, and I just want to have a little more consistency with that coloring mechanic, where I can rely on the fact that red enemies will interact in a certain way with my red trails. They don't need to be destroyed instantaneously, but like I just want them to do something. Like maybe their projectiles are blocked, maybe they are slowed down by my red trail. If you have that coloring mechanic in your game, I would really try to get the most out of it. Just make sure that the color of your ship really matters, really has an impact. If the coloring mechanic is something that differentiates you from other top-down shooters, I would highly recommend you lean into it even more and make even better use of that coloring mechanic. One thing I really liked was in the boss fight, where changing my color also changed the attack pattern of my little geared wheel companion. I feel like that was a very cool idea. I want to see more of that. Maybe you can even change up the attack pattern of the ship entirely when you switch the color, so you can basically, by switching the color, also switch between different weapons. That would be a nice multi-purpose mechanic and would definitely make the combat more interesting when you can switch between different weapons as you switch through different colors. Okay. Very nice, great game. Hashtag Funtime will come out in 2020. The link to the Steam store page is down below. If you dig games like this, I highly recommend you check out the Steam store page and hit the wishlist button. Okay, next up we'll play Castle of Lies, which was a game jam game, and we play this cute little knight. There seems to be a little bit of a gap in the ground here from time to time, which is something that happens when you stitch sprites together. Those are just some of the little annoying things, or oftentimes you don't know how to fix them. What did that switch do? It opened that door. I like that the lighting changes up a little bit here, because that makes it easier to orient myself. Makes these look less samey. Oh, a snail. I can't continue. Do I really have to smash those cute little snailies? Oh no, don't make me do that. The punch feels a little weak, which, yeah, of course, I have a stick, so maybe it's supposed to feel weak, but no, it doesn't really feel all that snappy, because it feels like there's a little bit of a delay. Usually what you want to do when you do a punch like this, you want it to be pretty much instant without any delay. Oh, no, I need to be careful not to be killed by snails. That would be embarrassing. So that was the combat tutorial. That is a button. No idea what that button does. Okay, I can push that creepy little figure onto the button. No, I cannot do that. Why not? That would have been so obvious. Lol. No, that is not the way. Okay. Then what am I supposed to do with it? This button right here. Ah, that button resets the figure. Ah, so let's not press that button and let's just walk through here. We'll obviously take that if it has a higher DPS. And even though this is more DPS, it still has that awkward delay. Like the animation doesn't even start right away. With stuff like that, it just makes such a big difference. Every little frame makes such a huge difference. Like I want this to be way more instant when I click the button. Quite a long game for a game jam game. Okay, don't touch the ghost. Here's a button with, once again, no clue what it does. At this point, I'm also starting to wonder what's the point of this view cone mechanic here, of this light mechanic. Yes, it makes everything a little darker and creepier, but maybe if you have a mechanic like this in the game, maybe you can do a bit more with it. Maybe there are some enemies or whatever that are scared away by light. Okay, don't drink the poison. Where am I? Oh no, am I once again at the very beginning? No. So losing that much progress always stinks. If the combat were more interesting, then okay, yes, perhaps I might enjoy doing this again. At the very least I can show this level again, right? Because you see this button, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't open the door, it doesn't do anything with that figure here. So you literally have no idea what that button does. And then same thing for this button here. Okay, except for the fact that it stays pressed. So it actually shows that the door's open now. But then it closes. I see, so you tried to fix that problem by making sure the door stays open. However, I'm gonna tell you what would have been way smarter. What if you had put the button over here so you can see the door, put a torch next to the door, so whenever you stand on that button you can see that the door opens, and then you don't have that awkward situation. See, just add a new tunnel up here and then put that button up there. That way that puzzle would be way more understandable. Also, I think simply by placing those two objects closer together, that button and that figure, it would be easier to understand that they're connected somehow. Oh, and of course, if you want to make it super clear, you can have a dotted line that goes to a respawn field or something like that. For a game like this, like for a castle context, these dotted lines and whatever probably don't make a lot of sense, but you could still do something like a rune on the wall and then have the same rune on the figure or something, just to make sure that there's some sort of connection, that you can make some sort of assumption of what you have to do. I mean, I'm sure most people will probably figure this out eventually, but it just feels more fair and more fun if you give little clues like that. Okay, neat. We're almost where we left off. Let's take the knife and the life and not touch the ghost, and we won't drink that. And once again, we can't get past that. Okay. Ah, okay. Nice. You did something with the light. I applaud you for that. That is epic. Can I make it follow me in here? Come on, follow me. It's not following me. Okay, so that's not the solution. Damn it. What do you want me to do? I don't want to do everything over again. No, I will not drink that. Maybe I just need to be fast enough. Oh, that actually worked. What the hell? Okay, combat, bring it on. Scan the combat, unfortunately not super interesting. And also not super satisfying due to the fact that it is not very snappy and it's a bit repetitive, not gonna lie. Of course, we have to keep in mind that this was a game jam game, so definitely not judging you, just telling you that I think you could probably have gotten an even better rating in this game jam if you maybe had made the game a bit shorter but a bit more snappy and polished. Can we leave now? No? Okay, why not? Did I miss an enemy somewhere? And I'm already once again very low on health. I'm scared. I'm scared. Please don't hurt me. That was a cool little chamber. I like that. Everything that mixes it up is always good. If you have really wide open rooms like this here, then narrow rooms like that with a little switch in them, a nice way to switch it up. Switch. Switch, switch. No! Now those doors are a bit buggy. That snail tricked me. It was not a snail. It was a cloaked mummy. No, I don't want to fight you. No. Oh, please, I want a checkpoint. Please. Yeah. Just had to find the correct combination. Give me some health. Okay, we get a different weapon now. Like, there's a lot of content in this game. Quite a long game. Oh, nice. I need that. No! That was so mean. That was unfair. That was just unfair. Seems like there was a checkpoint here. I see. That's basically a shortcut. That is cool. This is a common thing I see in a lot of games where the character actually moves faster when you move diagonally. If you don't know that, you're a bit screwed, because the bats are really fast. And the reason why that happens is usually because a lot of people code movement in a way where when you press to the right, your character gets a certain movement to the right, and when you press down, your character gets a certain movement downwards. So if you basically press to the right and down at the same time, then you are about 40% faster, because you're just getting the sidewards and the downwards movement at once. And if you don't compensate for that in the code, then your character is just straight out faster when moving diagonally. A bunch of poisonous drinks I'm not allowed to touch, because these drinks are so poisonous they automatically force me to drink them as soon as I touch them. Blong blong. Yes, refill that. Ooh, it's another bat. Okay. Seems like this is a bit of a crazy labyrinth section. And I unlocked another door in this corridor, which gives me a nice feeling of progress. And I get some shoes, and I get a new sword. Now would have been a good time to make me go up against some of the older creeps, so I can feel that my sword is more powerful now, that my weapon is more powerful. If you give me a stronger sword and then at the same time make me go up against significantly harder enemies, then I don't feel the increase in power at all. Very nice. Okay, I think this is as far as I'll play. I feel like you could even get a significantly better rating next time if you focus a little less on the length of the game and a little more on the quality, because especially for game jam games, people don't really care if the game is short. Like, you can make a 5-minute or a 10-minute game, and if it's good, you'll get a good rating. Because most people, when they play game jam games, they'll only play 5 or 10 minutes anyway. So for game jam games, I would really just try to focus more on the quality and less on the quantity. And if you do that, if you make sure hitting something with a sword feels a bit snappier, if you make sure that the puzzles are a bit easier to understand, and if you just put all of your really good ideas into the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game, like those ghosts that are stunned when you look at them with the light, and then spend a bit more time on level design or whatever. I feel like that can get you significantly better results in the next game jam. You told me this one got good ratings in the game jam, which I completely understand. It's pretty epic game, pretty impressive that you've managed to pull that off. I completely agree that this is a very nice and solid game. As I've said, I just feel like you will be able to get even better ratings if you put quality over quantity in the next game jam. The links to all of the games you can play yourself are of course in the description, so if you want to play this, go check it out. This game is called Hippoxxus. What I can already tell is that there's a little bit of delay on the mouse, which is probably due to the way you draw the mouse in Unity. You have to check there are different ways to draw a mouse. This seems one that definitely causes a bit of delay, which for a shooter game is not ideal. So I would look into that. Ooh. That actually looks sick. The style looks amazing. Okay, you can also vary your jump height. Jump feels a bit floaty, but I feel like in this space setting it kind of works for me. Feels nice. These yellow particles here, in my opinion, don't fit in that well. They look like standard Unity particles to me. At the very least, give them a pixel art sprite. Can I get through that? No, that is locked. But this is locked as well. That is strange. Did I miss something? Ah. In fact, I did miss something. Level design is not as linear as I thought at first, so already feels a little Metroidvania-like. Oh, nice. Gun has a nice feel to it. You can see it has just the right amount of screen shake. When I fire directly to the side, there's no knockback, but when I fire at an angle, my character is pushed back. That is strange. This would feel more satisfying if these things up here would just explode and completely destroy it. Little recommendation right there. See, I want this to be... I want this to blow up. Okay, that creature could take an surprising amount of shots. It would probably make my gun feel more powerful if these creatures wouldn't take that many shots. For something that looks that slimy, it resists a lot of laser shots. The thing is, it also just keeps moving like nothing happened, so maybe when I shoot it, it should at the very least stop moving for a brief moment, or have an animation where it reacts to being hit. I feel like it's just a little too unimpressed by my gun. No kidding, the art of this game looks really, really great. Okay, what does this do? Ah! It restored my health. That is cool. Can I collect this? No. Okay. Oh no. Okay, can't quite shoot this yet, so I probably need a new ability for that. One thing I have to say is that a lot of the rooms look a bit samey. Perhaps you can find a way to make them look a bit more diverse, so it's a little easier to orient yourself where you are, or just in general changing up the colors a little bit, just slightly, so I can know that I'm somewhere else, because this already feels like I've been here before. As that enemy looks more metallic, I would actually not be mad if it even could take a couple more shots, because in that context I feel like it feels like it makes more sense if it can take a lot of shots. It looks more stable than the slimes, if you know what I mean. I like the sound effect when going to a new room. You can't really see downwards very well, but kinda works. Perhaps later in the polishing phase, if you know the player has to go down here, perhaps you can just create a little exception for this room where the player is a little further up in the screen, so you can see downwards a bit better. Yeah, rooms like this are definitely memorable. help me to know where I am. Even though I think the levels have become a bit more linear. Intriguing. So we saw somebody down there, which means we're not alone. A little bit of storytelling there. Now I'm definitely intrigued to find out more. I hope you enjoyed the game. Yeah, I did. It was nice so far. Unfortunately, this is the end of the demo. I feel like they're not fun to walk around the levels. Any interesting enemy ideas to make the game a little harder? Because of the free aim mechanic, it makes it super easy to kill them. Ooh. Another one. So about the level design, I would definitely try to keep up that Metroidvania-like level design that is a bit more open and opens up different pathways later on as you unlock more and more abilities. I feel like that was pretty cool. Also well executed at the beginning, where you can't proceed unless you go all the way back and pick up the gun. That was definitely a cool moment. I agree that walking through the levels can feel a bit samey at times. So firstly, I would really try to make rooms look more different from one another. Easiest way to do that is with lighting. And then perhaps you can also put a couple of memorable objects into each room that are specific to that room, so the rooms just feel a bit more different from one another. Then in terms of the enemy design, I just thought the enemies you chose are probably that easy because it's still the beginning of the game. Like there are a ton of ways you can make enemies more difficult and more challenging. One that I wouldn't recommend is giving enemies more HP, because that makes your weapons feel weaker. What I would recommend is you make enemies stronger by making them faster. That is literally the easiest way to make them more dangerous and stronger, just making them faster, because if you have some enemies that come at you at a fast speed, then it suddenly becomes very important that you aim properly and hit them before they reach you, more or less. So basically, as soon as you have enemies that are faster than you can run, that's where it starts getting really dangerous and interesting. You need some enemies that just come at you at a faster speed, but I don't think you need them that early in the game. I feel like the enemies you have right now are very well fitted to introduce the player to the game and to get you going. So I didn't really mind the low difficulty so far. Like those slimes, I'm not exactly sure what their purpose is. I think their purpose should not to be dangerous, so basically punching bags that you can try your guns out on. That's what I would turn those slimes into. And then those rotating guns, on the other hand, I feel like were a fitting challenge for the beginning of the game. Perhaps you can even give them 1 or 2 additional HP. In terms of the look of the game, it already looks super nice. I really just hope this becomes a nice Metroidvania-like, where you just unlock cool new abilities to use, like a little grenade that I can use to bomb myself through that wall and stuff like that. Also the UI up here blends in very nicely, looks very, very nice. I dig this a lot. I feel like you're right. The fact that you have a ranged rifle is a little bit of an issue, because at this point it is very, very tempting to turn this into a bullet hell game, because this is pretty much the only way you can, or seemingly the only way you can make this difficult at this point, if you just have a ton of enemies that also fire projectiles in your direction. However, in this case, I feel like this would probably not be the correct route to go down, because you already have a ton of bullet hell games, and I feel like you could make this game and the enemies in this game a lot more interesting if you don't rely on bullet hell mechanics, and instead just create enemies that come at you really, really fast, and you have to kill them before they reach you. Of course, you can have some shooting enemies as well. That is of course a good way to increase the difficulty as well. But I don't know how I would feel about bullet hell stuff in here. We'll see. I'm intrigued, especially also by the story. The little figure we saw walking down there. Also a good way to make levels more interesting and diverse is to combine different elements that you have established before. That works even better if you have elements that allow for interesting combinations. So for example, what if you had different grounds? For example, a ground that is covered in slime and makes you slide, or if you had some conveyor belts that influence your movement, or water, or a shield barrier that you... Oh yeah, that is actually a cool idea. A shield barrier that you can't shoot through, and that allows you to combine your enemies in interesting ways with different other level design elements. So if you have a turret here, and then you have a shield barrier here, and then the floor here is covered with slime. And then you have a lot more possibilities for interesting combinations and to create interesting level design. That is what I would try, what I would go for. And then ideally weapon switching should also play an important role in the gameplay. So some enemies should definitely be more vulnerable to some guns than others. I feel like you should definitely try to artificially encourage weapon switching as much as possible. And even better if you can do that in a way where it explains itself. Maybe you can have some shock projectiles that create a little electric effect whenever they hit a wall. That gun can then be used to disable turrets and stuff like that. I feel like synergies like that is definitely what you're looking for in a game like this. Because this definitely seems to be a game about exploration, about figuring out stuff by yourself. I really like the way this introduces you to the game at the moment. It is absolutely not hand-holdy. It just lets you figure out stuff by yourself. And I like that. I respect it. I like that. Would be nice if I could switch my weapon with the mouse wheel. Honestly, very well done. I'm impressed. Very well done. I'm curious to see the final game. Hope this helped you out a bit. Now, if you see someone asking the following questions, please link them to this part of the video. These are questions that come up all of the time. First of all, will we do this again? Yes, we will do this again. I announced these videos on the community section of this YouTube channel as well as on our Discord group. Link in the description below. And then you have like a 1 or 2 week time window to send me your games. So if you want to send me your game for one of the next videos, please wait for the next announcement. Then another question that often comes up is, why didn't you play more games? Why don't you spend less time on each game and play more games? Thing is, I just want to give each game the time it deserves. I want to understand a game before I give my feedback. So I don't think I can rush through the games any faster than this. I'm already trying my best to be as quick as possible. You're sending me a ton of games. Like, unfortunately, that means I wasn't able to play the majority of your games. You've sent me so many games, it's just not possible to play all of them. I still appreciate that you sent me your games. A lot of them looked really, really good. I'm proud that I have such an awesome and creative community, and I don't feel like playing anymore. I'm sorry. Excuses, because I'm lazy. I know. Some people always wonder how I pick the game for these videos. It's mostly at random. Of course, I pick games that I think would make for a good video. That is my main concern, to be honest. I just want to make an entertaining video. So oftentimes, if I've already played 2 platformer games and I click on another platformer game, I'm just like, no, I don't want another platformer game in this video. This is not gonna be interesting to watch. But other than that, it's very much random. The quality of the game doesn't really matter. I don't care. I play whatever you send me. Don't forget to wishlist Willy Snail, and see you in the next one. Bye.
Have you ever asked yourself why you're here? You taught me how to manipulate